Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Big day for the Ohio State football program. Obviously picking up a nice commitment on the recruiting trail in that 2024 class. We also took a look at the spring game, have some notes in the notepad. Excited to get into it. Before we do, though, again, I just want to say thank you to you guys. Ohio State has been absolutely cooking on the recruiting trail. Feels like we're talking about them almost every other day at this point with how good they have been on the recruiting trail. So if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We can't thank you guys enough for all the support. Now, getting into Max LeBlanc, it's always nice for Ohio State to get a win against teams like Michigan, like Alabama. I mean, this dude, Canadian kid, played his high school ball in Tennessee. This kid had offers from pretty much everywhere in the country. And coming off recruiting Jelani Thurman in that 2023 class, you're looking at Ohio State maybe trying to get a little bit more athletic and dynamic at that tight end spot. They've had good tight ends, more good in the run game, inline blockers. They haven't had necessarily, like Cade Stover's phenomenal, but they haven't necessarily had those game breaker tight ends. I think Jelani Thurman and Max LeBlanc kind of represent maybe a transition into what kind of tight ends they want to target on the recruiting trail. But again, a nice pickup. You take a look at this 2024 class, really, really good. It's come together, kind of what you think from Ohio State. Now, Dill, I want to get into the spring game, right? This was a fun spring game. You got to see the ones play a lot. You had some injuries for sure, but Dill, taking a look at the quarterback position first, that's been the storyline throughout spring camp. Kyle McCord, he gets most of the reps with Brown being out. What was your kind of take on how this offense was running with Kyle McCord here?
And honestly, today it did look a little choppy. I think any Ohio State fan would think like they didn't do a great job protecting. I think Brian Hartline even kind of outlined that at the end of the half. Like, yeah, you saw some good things. Obviously, Marvin Harrison looked incredible. You knew he was going to be incredible. But, yeah, I think you saw from McCord kind of what you like expected, some really nice throws. But, again, it did feel a little choppy through.
And that's so hard. And that's a storyline that I don't think like the national – I know how State fans are talking about, but the national media is kind of just highlighting the quarterback competition. But you also lose Paris Johnson Jr., who's my number one offensive tackle in the 2023 NFL draft, and DeJuan Jones on the right side, as well as Luke Whiteblur at the center position. Those are three guys who are some of the best offensive linemen in college football, and you're looking to replace all three of them. So that's another big-time storyline to follow. It is hard to evaluate.
And you're going up against hammers on the defensive line. Because
that's
like,
exactly
Ohio State's loaded up front on defense. And that's not been like the case for a while at Ohio State. I feel like their defensive line has taken a lot of shrapnel, especially with the two straight losses to Michigan. But that group is led by JT, and Sawyer looks like he's coming along. And on the inside, Michael Hall, again, really kind of emerged last year, looked really good today. So, yeah, they gave that offensive line some trouble, and obviously that reflected a little bit on what McCord did. But, again, I don't think a lot of teams are blocking this team up front, so that's certainly part of it.
That's what I was kind of getting at. Like, you can say, oh, that offensive line struggled, right? For one, you see that in the spring game more or less. Like, you see the defensive line winning more than the offensive line. It's just the nature of spring game. That being said, for this particular group, like going up against guys like JT, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, Jack Sawyer is also like all-American candidate in 2023. It's hard to evaluate, like, are these tackles like really struggling, or is this defensive line just really, really good? So you can take some comfort in that. In terms of Kyle McCord and this offense, and in terms of distributing the football, I do like Ohio State fans. You know Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver. You'd be the number one wide receiver going in the 2023 NFL draft. Want to know what I kind of thought was really interesting, though, is that he was a guy that in 2022 just won because he's the biggest, the strongest. He has the best body control. Just the athletic traits are off the charts. He seemed like he's developing more as a polished wide receiver, too. Like, you watch that over route, that deep over route he ran, knows how to vary his speed, find those windows in zone coverage. And that's something we talk about when we're evaluating Ohio State wide receivers all the time. Like, they are just polished wide receivers. Jackson Smith-Njigba kind of being the latest example of guys who just know how to get open. Marvin Harrison Jr. seems to add that to his game. He's on Heisman watch for sure.
Oh, 100%. And it is hard to win Heisman's as a wideout. But if you, again, like, he's going to get so many targets this year, I think. And he's as good of a college wideout as I think I've seen in a while. I think the one thing Ohio State probably is looking for at this point, though, is who's going to be that next kind of guy. I think even I know Abuka and Fleming didn't play today, But even I think last year, a lot of Ohio State fans, I think, like, okay, when they had Garrett Wilson and Olave, it was a very strong 1-2 punch. And then you even
throwing Jackson Smith the Jig was the best
so
guy.
it's like you had 3 dominant NFL players. I think Kabuka and Fleming, they haven't, I don't think, emerged into that level yet. And on the call, they were talking a lot about guys like Carnell Tate, Noah Rogers, and I'm kind of interested to see if one of those like younger players kind of steps up. And Jaden Ballard, even, I thought he looked like he had some nice moments today. So
Me and you disagree a little bit on Emeka Egbuka. I think he just gets like undervalued because of how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is. I think Emeka Egbuka is also like a first-round candidate in 2024.
First round?
Oh, 100%. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. Like, he's got so much juice vertically. He's a phenomenal athlete. Now, it's an embarrassment of riches, and I am interested to see what this wide receiving group is. I mean, you look at how talented and how deep this group is just going off the note sheet. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. He's the wide receiver one. Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. And people forget how good Julian Fleming was coming out of high school. And then you go to the guys who are kind of at that next level. I thought Keon Grace looked really good. Carnell Tate is probably going to get a lot of burn as a true freshman. Brandon Ennis, Noah Rogers as well. Jaden Ballard, you noticed. It's absolutely silly how loaded this pass catching group is, and I'm just kind of interested to see what guys emerge as like the 3 or 4 guys that are going to be the main targets in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's me viciously competitive, and then
so competitive.
And then you even jump down, like the running back room looks really good too. And
5 guys that would start on
Chip Trainum, like a guy who you look at this depth chart, and that's kind of how I'd have it shaken out. I mean, those were 3 guys who came in as giant recruits at that spot. Travion Henderson obviously kind of leading the way. I think right now he not playing today, but God, that's a room that, I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed, if you will, with that running back room. So it's been the story for a while. Ohio State loaded on the offensive skill, and it looks like it's very much going to be that way again. Even though the offense obviously didn't look like great today necessarily, I still think you see there are some real stars.
It's really hard to see this offense not being one of the best in the country. They just have too much talent. I think they do need to figure out the offensive line a little bit more, and I wouldn't be surprised that in this transfer window they bring in an experienced tackle to just add some depth and competition to that group. Because if there is one spot on this offense that it's not an embarrassment of riches, it is the offensive line. And it's particularly the tackle position. So we'll see how that plays out. What I think stole the show personally is the defense, and this is under Jim Knowles. We talked about the potential growing pains Jim Knowles and this defense would have in 2022 because he comes in from Oklahoma State last year. He's running such a different defense than most of these guys. It's a complicated defense. It's a lot of schemed pressures. It's a lot of different zone coverage looks. There was going to be some growing pains, and I think last year you saw a lot of these very talented defensive backs playing more, like thinking more, and not really playing and reacting. I think during this spring game, I think you're seeing the emergence of they're starting to understand the concepts of this defense and just really, really playing downhill. I want to talk about this secondary group first because it's the group that got the most heat. Dill, I thought they looked phenomenal today.
I mean, Denzel Burke, like a guy who's played good at times for Ohio State, but has also had his moments of again, you look at some of these games against Michigan and just some bad moments for sure, but a guy is wildly talented, and if he can kind of play like he played today, where Carnell Tate, a lot of trouble I felt like getting open against him, and all the other wideouts too, and those are really great wideouts. So if Denzel Burke can kind of be that number one, where they can kind of have a side of the field where they don't need to be worried about, which really hasn't been the case at Ohio State in a while, I think. Again, you can just see this defense open up a little bit because they really haven't had that guy at corner.
Yeah, Denzel Burke looked phenomenal. He looks back to being that first-round draft prospect, All-American level dude, where you kind of didn't see that last year. And I think it's a little bit more of we're not thinking as much and we're just going playing football like the athletes we are. Jair Brown looked good. Obviously got beat by Carnell Tate up the sideline there. Davison Igbenos, obviously a guy that we really wanted at Michigan. He looks the part. Now, I think he's still developing a little bit. Again, he's only a true freshman last year at Ole Miss. But, man, when he's out there, he looks like that All-American cornerback with the length and size that he has.
One last guy I want to talk about in the secondary is Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering wondering, like, hearing the rumblings of Ohio State fans, like, oh, this guy's gonna be an animal. Like,
Yep.
what he skipped his senior year of high school, I believe, or I believe reclassified at least one time in his recruiting. I mean, he looked giant. He looked like a linebacker to start off, and then you saw some good coverage skills. I know one time coming up in a run fit on that long Chip Trayanum run, he kind of got pushed out a little bit, but again, he looked like that type of athlete, that size and speed combo and fluidity. I'm kind of interested to see, because I don't think that safety room is totally locked up. I thought that was a position that even more so maybe than the corners struggled a lot last year, and I'm kind of wondering if he can kind of earn a spot
in a very similar conversation of Sonny Styles. Another guy who really was popping out with CJ Hicks at that linebacker spot. Yeah, and this is a group that's deep, right? Tommy Eichenberg comes back. You have Steel Chambers. I'm not going to lie. Like, Cody Simon and CJ Hicks look like they could be the starters of this fight. I'm not saying that's not a dig on Tommy Eichenberg, who was a phenomenal linebacker last year. CJ Hicks was all over the field today.
Cody Simon, I just think we didn't see Eichenberg play, but like, I think Eichenberg last year was so dominant last year in terms of cleaning up most of the tackles. I was kind of thinking Eichenberg and Hicks, because I don't think you can not start Eichenberg, because just he made every tackle, it felt like last year. But again, I don't know that Steel Chambers and John Simon, or Cody Simon, I should say, can necessarily fend off CJ Hicks if he continues to develop, because he's got that like new age Fred Warner. That's kind of who he reminded of, just body type, long, lean, but tough and strong. So I would love to see him play a little more against the ones tackling, because obviously for a time they weren't tackling Mayan Williams, and I wish you could maybe see Hicks playing a little bit and see his physicality, but he's going to be tough to beat out, because again, I don't necessarily think Chambers and Simon are unreplaceable guys for a guy of Hicks's ilk.
Yeah, and to close out, another very impressive group, I thought, was that defensive line. And it wasn't just JT and Jack Sawyer, who looked phenomenally. I mean, you know they're going to be good. Some of the young guys who came in that 2022 and 2021 classes, those guys seem to be almost there, right? Hero Kanu from the inside, I thought he was really impressive. And Kenyatta Jackson, he reminds me, it's almost like did Zach Harrison just come back for another year and change his number? Because the length that he has and the size that he has is different. Amari Arbor is another guy you probably could put into that group where you didn't hear much about him because all the talk was on Zach Harrison, Jack Sawyer, and JT last year. Those guys also look like they're coming along, and that depth of that defensive line seemingly coming together nicely.
Yeah, and again, that's been a position of obviously great focus, and I do think it has just been looking better. I think it made a big step last year, and again, you look at what they did this year, they really didn't lose a ton. I get they lost Harrison, but I don't know. He wasn't JT last year. JT's at quite a bit higher plane, I would say. So I think this defensive line has a chance to, again, get back to what they were when they were really good with the Bosas and some of those other guys, Draymond Jones, who were all NFL players. And you haven't really seen that at Ohio State in a little while, but Sawyer and especially JT, I think, are kind of bringing back that attitude and that fire.
I agree, and that's a position that Ohio State's obviously historically been very good at. This seems like a year that could be really special for some of those edge rushers. Now, I guess I want to kind of close it out by talking about biggest question marks and then biggest things that you're excited about for Ohio State. The biggest question mark, at least for me, it is that offensive line. And when you talk about how in the transfer portal nowadays you can go and kind of fix a position that you're concerned about immediately, would that be kind of the position that you're looking at in terms of Ohio State maybe adding in the portal or at least trying to address?
Yeah, and I'm interested to see. I think, of course, the tackle play I certainly didn't wow me today. And
yeah,
obviously you do kind of have – when you lose guys like they've lost in the past couple of years up front, it is hard to easily reload it, and especially this early. So give these guys the summer. They're obviously highly recruited guys and all that. So I don't think it's a lost cause that they need to necessarily go grab guys out of the portal just because you give them some time. Again, they've been playing behind stars for a while now. So I don't know that I'm panicking and going straight to the portal, but it is the position
it's the one position that you're concerned about. And I was listening to a Ryan Day press conference, and he said, at this time last year, I was worried about Paris Johnson in terms of, is he going to be ready to start the season in 2022. So it might be kind of like that as well. Like you noted, it's really early. These guys got multiple months to kind of develop and get ready to be the guys up front. And so you're right. Maybe not just an immediate panic and go to the portal, but that would probably be the position that you're addressing if you were to address a position. Now, the biggest thing you're excited about, at least my takeaway, is the secondary. I thought they looked absolutely phenomenal. Is the biggest problem last year for Ohio State was, and I think Ohio State's defense got a little bit too crucified. Like they just gave up some big plays, which obviously you can't happen and you need to clean up. Down to down basis, that Ohio State defense was not as bad as I think the national media says it was. But that secondary, you got to be a little bit more confident in who you have. And I think year 2 under Jim Knowles, I think the players are there. I think they understand the concepts a little bit more, and they were flying around the football field today. So that's probably the position that you feel like answer the most questions in this round.
Honestly, my still most excitement is their defensive line. I think Ohio State's going to get back to doing what they used to do in what I think Jim Knowles is going to want to do. It is going to be a ultra aggressive and in like kind of smothering defense. And that's when Ohio State, like teams really couldn't move the ball on them is their defensive line was just too good consistently. And I think getting Jack Sawyer out of that jack position or whatever line, like hybrid linebacker DN role, which was like a waste of, I think, his talent because he's too good on the edge to have doing what he was doing. And in him and JT, like turn him loose. Can you just be ultra? Because not even just good, like can you be dominant? Can you be like when those good Clemson defenses looked really good?
And we talk about it all the time. What's in our mind, like when you're evaluating defense, what's the most important part of a good defense is getting after the passer. Like having a great defensive front that you don't have to bring 5-6 guys to affect the passer. I think Ohio State looks like they can be doing that this year. So I think there's some concerns you have for Ohio State fans, but I think a lot of questions were answered as well. We'll be monitoring the quarterback battle. We'll be monitoring the transfer portal if they add it. So I, again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Probably going to be quite a busy month for Ohio State on the recruiting trail in the month of April and the month of May. So stay tuned to the boys. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.